The peace or the positivity that requires protection and defense. This is not true peace. Hi everyone, welcome to Mindful Adventures. The first question: what is the difference between the animal instinct and the human instinct? Again, what is the difference between the animal instinct and the human instinct? Well, the word instinct is very significant if we take out the animal or the human aspect, just looking at what instinct is. So an instinct is a response through behavior that is not based on memory, prior learning, or prior knowledge. For example, the instinct of hunger results in eating. So the body starts to communicate, the brain receives the information that's communicated from the rest of the body that there's a need for food, fuel, or it could be the need for water. So the instinct, the natural instinct to eat and drink is simply a self-regulating response to hunger or thirst. And then the being is triggered into action to find food or water in order to eat or drink. Another example would be there has been research on this natural fear that humans have to snakes, and one could say that that is also a type of instinct. Looking for shelter, for shade, to protect oneself from harsh elements. I think in both animals and in humans, this is found. Not necessarily from learning, but just an instinct, something that is an innate behavior that arises in response to one's environment. And I think that the question, it's both simple and complex in the way that, of course you can Google what are the animal instincts and what are the human instincts. And there's lots of debate, especially when it comes to the human instincts. But there's an important distinction to make between instinct and impulse. An instinct is a natural response. The impulse is reactionary. An impulse is a sudden urge or a sudden desire that propels one into action. And the impulse is usually guided or directed by one's prior experience, memory, fears, situations or circumstances where reacting in a certain way may have led to a payoff of some sort, whether it's a subconscious payoff, when many years ago, for example, let's say you were insulted by someone or you needed to defend yourself, and it's possible that in that moment the response was appropriate. And then as time goes on, the response becomes a little bit more habitual, reactionary, And from there, it leads into impulsiveness. This impulse to react, the impulse to eat, the impulse to drink. So, going back to animals versus humans, the beauty and the naturalness of animals is that when they are hungry, they eat. When they're thirsty, they drink. Or they'll start the search to find something to eat or drink. When the moment arises for a need for shelter or protection, without reasoning, without the reasoning faculties that you would normally find in the human being, they respond. When an animal is ready to sleep, the body needs its rest. Without reasoning, they sleep. Now on the human side, when the moment arises and the body says, eat, I need fuel, what do humans do? We look at the time, say, okay, well, not yet, but if I eat now, then what will happen then? Why don't I eat this, even though my body needs that? And now I'm eating, but I'm full, but I'll just keep on eating because it tastes so good. Or I've had enough to drink, why not another? Or the body is thirsty. We'll say, yeah, but if I drink now, then I may need to use the bathroom in 10 or 15 minutes or in the middle of the night. So I won't drink. I'm sure the difference is clear. So when it comes to instinct versus impulse, this is a very important distinction to be aware of, and as we move throughout our days, centered as awareness, one becomes sensitive. It's funny, my stomach just growled. It's time to eat. This is the test to see if I will respond. But as we move throughout our days, centered as awareness, responding to the moment, the gut instinct, the innate instinct, then there's a simplicity and a grace to this movement. And when impulses arise, not to say that impulses are necessarily bad, but for the most part, I'd say most, if not all, impulses are reactionary rather than responsive. So when the impulse does arise to eat beyond reason, to drink out of too much reasoning, or to engage in sex, when there is no natural desire that is arising just to do it for the fun of it, it can be fun, but this is leading more into impulse, compulsive behavior. In centered in awareness, one can discriminate between the instinct versus the impulse. And by bringing one's awareness and attention to all that is arising, naturalness becomes one's way. I'm going to share 2 Zen koans that are pretty good reflection into instinct versus impulse. The first. In Tokyo, in the Meiji era, there lived 2 prominent teachers of opposite characteristics. One, Unsho, an instructor in Shingon, kept Buddha's precepts scrupulously. He never drank intoxicants, nor did he eat after 11 o'clock in the morning. The other teacher, Tanzan, a professor of philosophy at the Imperial University, never observed the precepts. Whenever he felt like eating, he ate. Whenever he felt like sleeping in the daytime, he slept. One day, Unsho visited Tanzan, who was drinking wine at the time, not even a drop of which is supposed to touch the tongue of a Buddhist. "Hello, brother," Tanzan greeted him. "Won't you have a drink?" "I never drink," exclaimed Unsho solemnly. "One who does not drink is not even human," said Tanzan. "Do you mean to call me inhuman just because I do not indulge in intoxicating liquids?" explained Unsho in anger. Doesn't sound like he's a good drinking buddy. So then Unsho, in anger, he continues, "Then if I am not human, what am I?" "A Buddha," answered Tanzan. The second koan. Tanzan and Aikido were once traveling together down a muddy road. A heavy rain was still falling. Coming around a bend, they met a lovely girl in a silk kimono and sash, unable to cross the intersection. "Come on, girl," said Tanzan at once. Lifting her in his arms, he carried her over the mud. Sounds like it's a part of a romance novel. Aikido did not speak again until that night when they reached a lodging temple. Then he could no longer restrain himself. "We monks don't go near females," he told Tanzan, "especially not young and lovely ones. It is dangerous. Why did you do that?" "I left the girl there," said Tanzan. "Are you still carrying her?" The next question. How do I handle negative talking people who may be a friend or close relative? Again, how do I handle negative talking people who may be a friend or close relative? Without positive and negative, would there be magnetism? Without positive and negative, could there be electricity? And oftentimes what we consider to be positive, like a positive person or a negative person, these compartmentalizations may prevent one from seeing things as they are. just the simple nature of things. You know, there's this, I wouldn't call it a movement, but it's a mindset of, I need to protect my positive energy from the outside. I gotta guard my inner peace. Yeah, I don't buy that. The peace or the positivity that requires protection and defense, this is not true peace or positivity. It is a garment, a pretense that one can choose to live by, and in going through life in its various dimensions, in different environments and experiences, encountering many different types of beings, defense, protection, and judgment leads the way as the pretense. And what is that pretense? I'm a positive person. I don't deal with negative people. But this type of resistance, this type of defense and wrong attitude points to one's own negativity that is being resisted or denied in exchange for the pretense of being a positive person. Again, without positive and negative, magnetism may not be a question. Without positive and negative, what is electricity? Positive and negative generates a movement. Actually, I'd say that positive and negative, that movement is motivation itself. And so what to do? Negative talking people or negative people. Yeah, there are people who have, let's say they vibrate different energy or different senses of energies. Some are more upbeat, some are more low-key, some are more chill, vibrant. You have extroverts and introverts and all of these different categorizations. They serve their purpose in limited circumstances. In dealing with the being, the first thing that needs to be understood is that the being is dynamic beyond comprehension. The ability to move between positive and negative, the ability to be centered as positive and negative arise and dissipate, centered as awareness, will allow you to interact and encounter a wide variety of different beings and personality types without needing to handle them. How do I handle negative talking or negative people? Don't handle them. Beings are not objects. They cannot be handled. The only thing that can be handled is the division from within between your own positivity and negativity. And in clinging to one polarity, the magnetism is off. Now, yes, a moment can arise, of course. All is possible in consciousness, where there's a need to set a boundary or need to distance oneself. But there's a slight trap here in that the ego will take this distancing, it'll co-opt the heart's need for silence and space and say, well, no, I'm doing it because of them. You take the space and you take the distance to go within and identify the negativity that you're seeing on the outside, come to peace with that within, and then you see there's no one or nothing to handle. Family members or friends can be very different, different attitudes, positive or negative. And I'd say to always be positive, on the outside at least, when people are always positive, I sense there's a bit of inauthenticity there. However, I'm not saying that everyone who's optimistic and positive, I'm not saying they're fake. However, in naturalness, both polarities disappear and reappear according to the moment. Not according to mindset, but according to moments. Whatever is the appropriate response. If it appears to be negative, then this could be a learning experience for you to look and say, okay, this brings up some feelings in me. This brings up some things that are not so nice. Then that only means that you have to go in and make peace between opposites. And then move and be peace, as peace. And then, of course, the interactions and the experiences around others, different social experiences and environments. You just be yourself and allowing perceived others to be themselves, but all is the self. So it comes back to you. Judgment is looking on the outside and saying, this one is positive and this one is negative, and I want to cling to this one because I identify with the positive. This is judgment. Versus discernment. I sense something is a little bit off. I sense some low energies. How does it feel? Not how are they making me feel, but what am I detecting? What am I sensing? And see, discernment is so much more powerful. It doesn't appear that way, when it comes to judgment. It's very easy when people judge others. There's a sense of power and self-righteousness, and I made a proper judgment. But this is a trick. It's an illusion. Borderline weakness if it's not in the right, appropriate moments. I'd say leave the judgment for the judges. Even some of them can't really judge, but that's a whole other conversation. However, discernment is more inwards, not pointing out, but it's more turning in, saying, what am I sensing? My intuition. What do I see? And with pure awareness, seeing both the positive and negative arising, and then just falling back in that awareness that is untouched by positive and negative. Take some time to rest, and then discernment will be far more valuable than judgment. So how to handle negative talking people who may be a friend or family member? Don't handle. Go in. And see whatever negativity is arising in you, and just surrender to that. It's almost like an internal confession. For example, if you're feeling negative, you're feeling some resistance from someone, I feel resistance. Yes. Or, I feel some not so good feelings. Yes. Tell the truth. And in telling the truth, surrendering to what is, arising from within rather than from without, then you make peace between opposites, and you see there's nothing to handle. May all be as awareness and move in discernment rather than judgment. Namaste.